Welcome back everybody to another MOTOBOB video. Now recently I had the pleasure of borrowing Suzuki's brand new middleweight naked, the GSX-8S. We had it for a couple of weeks and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a lively, torquey, cool looking bike in my opinion, and also at a fairly decent price point. But the thing is, if you're looking at buying one, there's a good chance that you're also looking at Honda's similar offering, the CB750 Hornet. Plenty powerful and good on price, so which is the bike to go for? Well, in this video we'll go through all of the major review categories, give them a score, and then at the end declare a winner. Both bikes are powered by brand new parallel twins, and they're not far off in terms of capacity either, with the Honda at 755cc and the Suzuki at 776. But the key difference here is the dimensions of those cylinders. So the Honda is the more over square of the two. It's got a bore of 87mm and a stroke of 63.5. So they're much wider than they are tall, and that's what you'll typically find on a more high revving motorcycle. The Suzuki, on the other hand, is 84mm in the bore and 70mm in the stroke, and so still over square but not quite so much. In fact, in the marketing material they refer to it as a long stroke design, and so unlike the Honda, this is more of a typical attribute of an engine that's able to make more low down torque. You'll see the difference in the performance figures, with the Honda making more peak power higher up in the revs, whereas the Suzuki makes more peak torque and it makes it lower in the revs. That's exactly how they compare on the road as well. The Honda spins up freely and it's really quite entertaining if you can keep the revs up, whereas the Suzuki has more guts and pulls stronger through the mid-range. This category is a really tough one. They're both great, and I think it depends a little bit on your riding style. I think it's also worth adding that the Honda feels more aggressive with a bit more snap to the throttle too, whereas the Suzuki is very gentle and smooth on that initial engagement of the throttle, and it's very well balanced and smooth. But I think I have to give this one to the Honda just for the fun factor. Now next up, the sound. Both of them get a 270-degree crank, which gives them some of the snarl of a V-twin, but I think there is still a pronounced difference here. The Hornet has a really good bark to it. It sounds great when you're fully on the gas, and it also has a decent amount of induction noise when you're in the cockpit. The Suzuki though is much quieter, both at the exhaust but also in the cockpit as well, where it really doesn't liven up that much even under heavy acceleration. I mean, it has potential, perhaps with an aftermarket exhaust, but judging them in stock form, the Honda takes this one easily. Onto the handling, and the Hornet is certainly the more flickable and nimble of the two. It's got a shorter wheelbase and a narrower tire at the rear, plus it's got a significant weight advantage, so it weighs about 12 kilograms less. It's something they told us about in the press briefing at the launch. They said that they intentionally designed the bike to be super quick turning and maneuverable, and you certainly feel that when you're out riding the bike. The Suzuki, on the other hand, is a little bit longer. It's got that bigger 180 section rear tire and also the extra weight, and so combining all those factors, it biases a little bit more towards stability, and there's probably something in the geometry of the bikes too. To me though, it feels a touch more balanced and neutral, and I think that'll probably be to more people's tastes. Now braking is very similar on both bikes. They get 4-piston radially mounted Nissin calipers up front, and they're both perfectly good in terms of stopping power, and while the suspension setups do look externally similar with non-adjustable upside down forks and a preload adjustable monoshock on each, the Suzuki feels like it's set up a little bit firmer and it's more supportive, so I'd say that's going to be preferable if you like to push on a bit. Now perhaps the Hornet would make the better town bike. That lightness and nippiness and the softer ride I think would make it ideal for carving through traffic on well-used roads, but as a balanced all-rounder, I think my point has to go to the Suzuki. There's something similar in the riding position as well. The Hornet feels like a small bike at 795mm in the seat height, and it's more generally compact in its dimensions as well. Now of course they've got one eye on the beginner market, with middleweight twins like these being right in that first big bite sweet spot of feeling exciting and aspirational enough but not overwhelming in terms of power or price. Planting both feet on that bike is super easy, and it's narrow in the waist as well, but the resulting riding position is pretty much bolt upright with your bum relatively low to the bars. Now it's comfy enough. We spent all day riding it on the press launch, and also I I borrowed one for a couple of weeks later than that, and I found it super comfortable. But it's just that given that the engine has a bit of a kick and the chassis has that quickness too, sometimes you just want to be a bit more tail up and over the bars. The Suzuki, for me, perhaps strikes a bit of a better balance, so a standard seat height of 810 millimeters. It might not sound like a great deal of difference, but given that it feels more substantial overall, you just get more of the feeling that you're riding a proper big bike. I'm 5'9" or 175 centimeters, so this sort of seat height for a middleweight, versatile naked anyway, feels just about right. It's easy enough to get your feet down so that you can work your way through tight gaps between cars if you're commuting, but enough of that sporty vibe to make it fun on the open road. The handlebar position and the foot pegs are pretty neutral, but that seat height is the big difference for me, and so I'll have to go for the point to the Suzuki here. It's increasingly impressive just how much tech you can get now on bikes, even at this super competitive price point. Both of them get a nice big color TFT dash, but it's the Hornet that really lays on the features with 3 riding modes of sport, standard or rain, and each of them gives you varying levels of power delivery, engine braking and traction control, which is also possible to switch off completely. There's also a custom mode so you can dial in your own unique combination, and then you've got Bluetooth connectivity with the dash, self-cancelling indicators, a USB charger, and heated grips and a sweet up and down quick shifter in the accessories catalog. Now, the Suzuki is much more simple. You can choose a power mode and a traction control setting through the switchgear and dash, and the quick shifter does come as standard, but otherwise that's pretty much it. I will say the buttons have a nicer feel and contour to them, and I do prefer the visual layout of the dash here. It's much cooler looking in the design, whereas the Honda is lacking a bit of pizzazz. But for that huge set of features at a bargain price, you'd have to say the Honda wins this one. Now, when the Honda was about to be launched last autumn, they put out a few teasers that showed a vague silhouette, and I think it got people pretty excited for what was to come. In reality, you know, it is a decent looking bike, but perhaps a bit of a letdown versus those initial sketches. I think because some of the components like the headlight and the wheels with that skinny rear have been pretty much directly borrowed from the CB500. Now, I think I could definitely live with it. I do like the yellow version, and I do understand that to hit an aggressive price point like this, Honda must have had to find some efficiencies, but out of the two, it definitely feels like the least daring. Now, the Suzuki won't be for everyone with the stacked headlights up front, but at least it's bold and a bit different, and I think most importantly, not borrowing visual cues from something that's lower down in the range. As I was saying before, even if you're a newer rider, I think you still want something that borrows from the style of the bikes further up, just so you feel like you're still getting a slice of the best that that brand can offer, even if you don't quite have the budget. I also like the color choices, some of the finishing touches as well, and the simple modern graphics on the side. And really, it's only the bulb indicators that let it down. I wish the LEDs came as standard rather than being a 230 odd quid extra. But I think for that, I can forgive it, and so the point here is certainly for the Suzuki. Now onto the all-important price, and this one is a walkover for the Hornet, which comes in at a ridiculously impressive £6,999. I was absolutely certain when they launched this bike that they'd hike the price after a couple of months, because so many manufacturers do the same so that the price and subsequent immediate sales look impressive at launch. But here we are, getting on for almost a year since they announced it, and they're still holding on to that ridiculously low price. And so I guess Honda just have the ability to do that because they're such a huge company. It could be the economies of scale that keep the production costs down, or perhaps they can just afford to take a little bit less margin on each bike. But if you've got a hard budget of £7,000, it's really hard to say that there's anything better out there to spend your money on. It's absolutely loads of bike for the money. It's got a brilliant spec and a super lively engine, even if I do find it a little bit too low in the seat. Now the Suzuki comes in at £7,999, so an extra grand, and I'd say that still isn't bad. I mean, it's an excellent bike, and it is on a par on price with other similar bikes in the market, like the Triumph Trident 660 or the KTM 790 Duke. But directly, head on with the Honda, you'd have to say that the Honda's the better value for money all day, every day. So that makes it 4 points to the Honda, 3 points to the Suzuki, so a close run thing, but with this point system, the Honda edges it. Thing is though, it's not as simple as just saying that everyone should go out and buy that one, because the riding position and the looks are only going to suit certain tastes, whereas the Suzuki gives you a little bit more presence, and it's also the better looking bike. The Honda's more lively, the Suzuki's smoother, the Honda's full of tech, the Suzuki is stripped sit back and easy to use. So I'd definitely advise you to demo both if you can. But in the meantime, I'd love to know which bike you'd pick down in the comments below, so do let me know. The other bike you also might want to think about is the 790 Duke from KTM, and if you've not seen it already, I'll link to my review on the screen here so you can give it a click and give it a watch. Also, do hit subscribe already if you want to see more head-to-heads like this. Many thanks for watching today, and we'll catch you in the next one.